Good evening. I'd like to call to order our Monday, February 12th, 2024 School Board Discussion Meeting. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. Just a couple reminders, we do have registration for anyone who would like to address the board on any of the actionable items on our agenda. There are forms up near Attorney Elwood. Fill out the form, return it to the board table, and we'd be happy to bring you up before we take action. We also have public comment at the end of the meeting, available for anyone who would like to address the board on any subject, school board related. Those forms are also available by Attorney Elwood. Fill out the form, return it to the board table, and we will recognize you at that proper time. All board members were provided background information in preparation for tonight's meeting. Our meeting is being live streamed, and we welcome those who are viewing us remotely. We'll begin the meeting tonight with our iRead 3 presentation. Linda Williams, Stephanie Barrett, and Dr. Stevens.
Thank you so much. I am going to kind of start it off. And so we are not only going to talk about iRead 3, but also just literacy in general. So the order that we'll present in is Linda will talk to us a little bit about the facts and what the data is telling us currently. And Stephanie's going to talk about the efforts that we're making currently in the classroom. And then I'll kind of wrap it up with what the future holds and what we're going to move forward with as we continue on trying to help our kids be more and more literate across our whole district, not just third grade, but that'll be the start tonight. So Linda will begin.
Thank you. And we'd like to give you some background information. Since iRead 3 has been in the news quite a bit the past few months, it's been continued to be discussed at the legislature with some pretty major changes. I wanted to provide some of the background and history just so you'd have a good understanding of what has happened in the past. So it's actually known as the Indiana Reading Evaluation and Determination. I know I don't see it written out like that very often. I had to look that one up. It was first passed into law in the state of Indiana back in 2010. And so the first time that we administered the test was in 2012. And it's supposed to measure foundational reading skills based on our Indiana academic standards. The original guidance, which you actually do have a link to, the document that spells this out, was for students who did not pass that iRead 3 test. They were to continue to receive instruction in grade 3 reading. They would be officially reported as a third grader. They would retake that iRead 3 the next year, and they would take the iRead 3, the iStep grade 3 assessment. So it was up to the individual districts and schools. We could place them in a fourth grade classroom, give them third grade instruction, and then test them at the third grade level. That's how it was designed from the beginning. And of course, there are certain students that are eligible for a good cause exemption. That would include students who have been retained 2 times, students with disabilities, and our English learner students. So those students could go ahead and matriculate on up to the next grade level. Then back in 2017, 2018, they made a big change to that, and at this point they said, we really want you to take a look at the whole child. How is their academic performance in all of the subject matters? And it's up to you, local schools, whether you retain that student or not. You would still have to give the iRead 3 assessment. Retention is still an option, but they were no longer telling us that we had to mark them as a third grade students. So fast forward to this year. We'll start at the state level and then we'll work our way down to the district and the school level. At the state level, this past year, our proficiency rates for students increased to just very minimally, 0.3 percentage points. 81.9% of Indiana's grade 3 students passed, which meant 14,805 students did not pass. And some of those students, of course, would have been eligible for a good cause exemption. Then this particular chart gives you the visual of what that looks like starting in 2012, where the pass rate was 91.4%. Our progress was, fairly level right up until the 2019-2020 year, which of course we did not give the assessment that year because we were all at home due to that COVID pandemic. And then starting in the 2020 school or 2021 school year, we did start reassessing again, 81.2%, and the values have gone up just a little bit since then at the state level. So then looking at the district, last year, our proficiency rate actually decreased just a little bit by 1.4 percentage points. 78.6% of our grade 3 students passed IREAD 3, which meant 101 did not pass. Of those students, 42 of them were granted a good cause exemption. And this also gives you the visual of how we looked in comparison to the state, because that always gives us a lot of context as to our performance. The dark red line is for Portage, the orange line is for the state of Indiana. So last year, this is what we looked like at the school level. We ranged from a 63.9% at Central Elementary up to a high of 90.9% at South Haven Elementary, and the rest of our schools kind of fell in there in between. We also wanted to provide you with 3-year trend data at the building level, and then I've also included the Portage totals as well as the state totals as a reference on that particular chart. As you were probably aware, if a school has scored lower than the 70%, a school is going to be required to participate in the Indiana Literacy Cadre, but I believe Dr. Stevens is going to be addressing that with you a little bit more in depth. Fortunately, IREAD 3 is not the only way we have to look at our students' progress in reading. We start down at the very foundational skills when grades kindergarten, first and second, using the DIBELS assessment. Now that one stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It's comprised of 6 different subtests, which I have listed for you, and the various grade levels that they are given to. It's very developmentally appropriate. We aren't testing the reading comprehension of our kindergarten students. Likewise, we're not testing our second grade students with letter naming fluency, so it's always a little bit somewhere in between, and that's why it's not consistent subtests between those various grade levels. With that DIBELS assessment, we give that 3 times a year to all students in K through 2, and then we are doing progress monitoring for students at least monthly to our at-risk students. Sometimes it's on a more frequent basis as required by their individual plan, so it could even be a weekly assessment that they're given so we can track their progress. And also, just kind of as a side note, that DIBELS assessment also serves as our dyslexia universal screener at the very beginning of the year, because as, again, by state law, we are required to identify students with learning characteristics related to dyslexia. And I've also given you just kind of a chart of what the district level results look like, kind of on a big screen level. This is their composite score. Now that's not an actual subtest, it's just the combination of the subtests that are critical at that particular grade level. So we are very used to those color codings. Red is most at risk, and then it moves up to the blue, which is above grade level. So we always want to get the kids out of the red, move them up into the green and the blue areas. So this is just a big overview at those 3 grade levels. But what we're typically looking at the building level are the actual subtest scores. how are they doing on letter naming fluency? How are they doing on phoneme segmentation fluency? And that's been a big part of our conversations, like with our Title I teachers. We meet monthly and we're reviewing the data, finding out what's working, what's not working, trying to help each other so that we can all help our kids succeed across the district. And in addition to the DIBELS data, we're also using NWEA. That's actually used in K through 11 for both math and reading. We did just finish our NWEA testing window last week. It got pushed back just a little bit due to the weather, to those weather delays that we had. So we don't have current data for you at this point, but this is just a quick overall picture from fall 2023 of our growth from the previous year's fall. And just a quick explanation of this, the orange triangle that you can see, that is where their growth was projected to be. The blue bar is where they were observed, where their growth level was observed at that particular grade level. So this particular graph is our math. And then we also have the language arts or the reading score by grade level. All right, and I think it's time for, yes.
Yep.
All right, good evening. So we get all of that wonderful data, and then what do we do with it, right? So what we do with it is we look through a multi-tiered systems of support framework, and we do this district-wide, not just particularly for our third graders or iRead, but it is very powerful when we look at our populations that have the greatest deficit. So general background, MTSS is a framework that uses the data that we pull from academics and assessment, but then pulls in that whole child approach so that we're looking at their social emotional well-being and their behaviors. What are they telling us with their behaviors? We look at all three of those pieces, and that's when we determine appropriate interventions. The other piece about MTSS is that we're looking at a tiered level of support, so you can move up and down, and we layer in those supports as needed for kiddos. Just clicked on Jeremy. Jeremy? Okay, so tier 1 is general instruction that everybody gets. Okay, our entire district has tier 1 curriculum and programming in every single building. We're looking at that social emotional component. We use that at the elementary, in particular with Mind Up. We are looking at that academic curriculum, and then we are looking at behavior. So if you've heard of PBIS or positive behavior interventions, we're doing all that for every kid every day. When we use those universal screeners and other data assessment points, we're able to pull out those kiddos in the red and the yellow to say, okay, time out, we've got some academic concerns. What do we need to do? And so we pull teams together. We look for their teachers, we look at the school advisors, we look at our behavior specialists. I will jump in on those meetings, building administration, and then our title staff, special ed teachers. We pull teams together who know the students best, and we start to talk about them. What are the explicit skills that they're having deficits in? What is their attendance? What is their discipline? What is their demeanor like in the classroom? Are they making friends? Are they not? How many times have they gone to the nurse? Are they constantly leaving the classroom to go to the bathroom? We're looking at everything. And that's the information that we're using to come up with what type of plan does a student need. And so for some of our kids, that's an academic plan alone. And we can work on academic goals. Other kids, we want to work on social, emotional, and behavior support. So they'll get those things all layered in. And we'll move to Tier 2 support. So when we talk about that layering, they're still going to get everything in Tier 1, all of that general instruction. But then we're going to add components to them based on that discussion that we had about their academic deficits, social, emotional, and behavioral well-being. And so when we do that, then we progress monitor. And we can do that weekly, but we meet back as a team every 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum. So students can be fluid across these tiers, and we're constantly looking at, are they making progress? We do reassessments, we get back together and say, okay, is this kiddo ready to go back to Tier 1? Can they maintain without these extra supports? If yes, they exit. If not, that team comes back together and says, what do we need to do next for this student? So maybe they're a kiddo who have had a couple of different types of interventions. some are successful, some aren't. So we want to move on and layer more support onto the areas that weren't successful for them. And that is when we'll move into tier 3. Again, we're layering, we're not taking anything away from them. So they're still getting the baseline instruction that everybody else in the district is getting, and then they're getting their tier 2 supports, the ones that were successful, and then we're adding tier 3, the extra layers of what they need. Okay, so at this point in time, we're really doing some intensive and explicit instruction for these kiddos, and we're talking about really small groups, and sometimes one-on-one at a tier 3 level. We increase the progress monitoring for them, so we might be looking weekly, if not multiple times a week, at are they making progress? Because then we're going to come together and look at that data and say, okay, we hit this spot, they're making progress, we're going to bump back to tier 2, or are we looking at a student who has a disability and we need to move on to do an educational evaluation to see if they qualify for other types of services. So that's the global framework. And so I just wanted to put some examples in here. By no means is this everything we're doing. We have a lot of spreadsheets on our interventions across the district for academic, social, emotional, and behavioral. I meet with every building for their monthly MTSS meetings, but then as a district, we pull members from each building 4 times a year so that we can have that vertical and horizontal articulation, so that we can make sure everybody has access to the same types of interventions and we know what's working for our kids. So when we talk about those types, again, I've said repeat, academic, social, emotional, and behavior supports. When we look at intensity and duration as we're going from tier 1 to tier 3, that can look like number of minutes. So are we doing a 15-minute mini lesson? Are we using an intervention that says you need to do this 40 minutes 3 times a week for the fidelity measures to match up to what we've seen in our research? Again, any combination of 1 day a week to 5 days a week. Just depends on how many deficits and what type we're looking at. Location, so are we staying in the general education classroom and having the interventionists come in, or do we need to pull them out to a different area in the building to deliver that intervention? And that will go along with sizing, which is the next piece. So whole group, I call that 1.5. So I talked about tiers 1, 2, and 3. 1.5 is where we've got a large bubble in a classroom, and we need all of the supports to come in and to do like classroom-wide intervention. But then again, we can go to small group, and at that tier 3 level, 1 to 3 kids, I would say at the most. So then we talk about who. So I like to talk with our educators about shared service modeling. So sometimes it's our classroom teachers delivering the interventions. Sometimes it's our title staff. Sometimes it's our special education staff. Of course, with the guidance of licensed educators, our support staff can help deliver interventions. When we have kids who need like behavioral or social emotional check-ins, sometimes they want to come in and talk to their favorite custodian, and that's okay. I'm checking in with the custodian at the beginning of the day. We just have a backup person if for some reason that custodian is absent that day. So it's really neat that we can pull all of our staff together to provide this structure for kiddos to look towards success. Any questions? Or I'll leave those to Dr. Stevens. Strike that.
So, as you can see, one of the greatest strengths that Dr. Alanes has brought to this situation is the team that she's built. And there's a great deal of people who are all pulling in the same direction and have a very similar mindset. So we're all talking about whole child. It really doesn't matter into what that child brings to the table. We're going to try to find where they're at and bring them forward. So you can see that the data that we gather lends itself to that, but also then the programming that we're putting in place also lends itself to that, to try to find those individual strengths and weaknesses and bring them along as where we can. So one of the things that Linda mentioned was that we're going to be part of, especially Central Elementary, is going to be part of the state's literacy cadre. So I wanted to bring to you, this is the state's guidelines or guiding principles for literacy. And the biggest part that I wanted to point out was that we are going to, and one thing that we had talked about before we even were named to that literacy cadre, is building a culture of literacy here in Portage. How do we better help all of our community value the literacy And that just means being able to bring in information, put it back out in a comprehensive, comprehensible fashion. So we want to try to make sure that our whole community values that. And so we're working on that through our whole outreach to our community, and some of the other possibilities that we've put out. We've become much better communicators with our library system over the course of the last year or two. So those are some of the things that we value and that we're going to try to make sure that we put forward as we move along. So the literacy cadre that Dr. Allen, or that Linda mentioned, is going to bring to us a new coach, and that's something that we're going to bring forward for you guys. Normally, you guys are the final say in who we hire. In this case, it's a little bit of a hybrid, in that that person also has to be approved by the IDOE. So we have, and Linda and I and Sue Solar were able to interview 4 very strong candidates, and the person that we found to be our best fit has accepted. She is moving forward with applying to the IDOE. Fortunately, she had already begun some of the literacy training through the IDOE before she even applied for this position, and had been a literacy coach in a previous district. So she had a great deal of a wealth of knowledge to begin with. So that's one of those things that will bring forward some help in terms of that. And in all of the interviews, one thing that I mentioned was that I wanted to try to wring every bit of knowledge out of that person, because they're specifically supposed to work with K-2 at Central, okay? That's what their assignment from the IDOE is. But I want to try to get everything else out of them that I can. So that person's going to try to help in all of our different literacy initiatives. And that they were kind of warned as to that, that I'm going to try to use them in different ways as well, with different groups, and be more of a coach across our district. We also will be administering the iRead 3 to grade 2. And that will not hold the same kind of high stakes testing that they talked about with some of the retentions and things along those lines. But it will give all of us an opportunity to see it ahead of time, to see those children's strengths and weaknesses, and to try to remediate before we even get to that high stakes portion of it. So that's a part of what we'll do. And then it also gives us more and more insight into what is it that our children are being asked to do at that state level. So that's one of the reasons we're going to be part of that literacy cadre. I think you and I hit the button at the same time. So those are some of the stipulations that we will be doing that. But also, one of the things that brings with it is some professional development. And so we'll be participating in online cadres in professional development. Not only our new coach, but Linda and myself have been part of those already. And we're trying to make sure that we're getting all the T's crossed and I's dotted, which, kind of appropriate in this case. Just so you're aware, as it says on there, because this is a required from the IDOE situation, they are putting a little bit of backing to that, in that they will pay 2/3 of that person's salary the first year, 1/3 the second year, and then after that, it's on to us, whether we continue that or not. And then, but I fully, and I've talked with at all of the interviews, that I fully support this idea, whether we get paid or not. And so we will do everything we can to try to continue this program after this grant cycle runs out. So we'll keep moving on that, and you'll be kept abreast of that as well. So one of the things that the IDOE has done to try to promote this whole idea of especially 3rd grade literacy, but literacy across our whole state, is to have this dashboard available. To all the community members. There's no login, there's no kind of a key to get in, but everybody can see their district's achievement and their participation rates, and it puts all the warts out there that are available. Now, one thing that I will tell you is, of those students that Linda talked about, where they scored and the like, and it was approximately 100 that didn't pass this time, 40 some of them have then passed later on, because we get a retest. So we get the information back quickly in this case. The part of the concern about iLearn is always that we don't get the information back quickly enough to really remediate. Well, that's not been the case with iLearn or with iRead 3. we do get the information back fairly quickly, and we can make some adjustments. And so those children are immediately, when identified as having some struggles in iRead 3, are put into some more intensive tiers of intervention, and then we get an opportunity to summer retest them. And you'll hear from different districts, different philosophies on when they want to do that. They might want to wait until after summer school or whatever the case may be. My philosophy has been, and what we have done, is to do it right at the beginning of that window. So we don't wait more than a day after our school year is over to have that second retest. And that, in my opinion, is because it's still fresh in the children's mind. We've kept them going. We haven't had any downtime. Let's keep that opportunity as quickly as possible. So those kids did get to retest. Now, some of those that passed are also some of them that have not passed in prior years, so that 42 may not all be third graders, but we do have a fairly decent percentage of those that retest and do pass eventually. So, over the course of the last several weeks, I have been meeting with all of the site-based teams at all the different levels with our teachers, and we are talking about something called the SENS, and the state has identified what they call standards and essential need of support. And basically, some of you that have been in education a while have heard of power standards and how we identified those over the course of time. Well, the state has somewhat done that for us in naming these standards of essential need of support. And what they have done is taken a weighting system of those standards that are going to be tested on iLearn, as well as what are needed in the next level, and they've given that more weight. And then they've given us a spreadsheet that we plug in our own performance at each school, and that gives us a final quotient that then we can identify highest and lowest needs of support. So all of our schools have done that. And we have then taken that standards and we have identified those as, okay, we better get on top of these in order to be prepared, those that have the highest number there. One more, please. So what we have done then, each school identifies it, and then we say, as Stephanie mentioned, now what are we going to do about it? And so what we have done is, Indiana has done a nice job this time of organizing their resources. And in the past years, the website's kind of been all over the place. You had to click on a lot of places to try to find something. Well, they moved it off of their website altogether and took it to a place called the Indiana Learning Lab. And so all of us have logged into the Indiana Learning Lab. You have to get an account, but it's free. It doesn't track anything from what they say. And we have all logged into that Learning Lab. And we have, I've tried to help people see how you go navigate through that to get to resources specifically regarding those standards that we identified in that SENS document. And then we talk about, okay, what are the blueprint questions that went with that? The questions that are released from the IDOE on the iLearn, we use those. We put them up on our screens and we say, okay, kids, how do we best figure this question out? Now, those are not going to be the exact ones on the state test any longer, but they were prior to that. So they give us an idea of how those questions are asked. How do we get through that? What do we eliminate in order to make it a logical question? One of the mantras that I bring to those conversations is, I don't want to be driven by a test. I'm not trying to say that we teach to a test, but let's learn the skills that give our kids the best opportunity to show their wisdom rather than their test-taking skill. I don't want our kids to be tripped up on using a Desmos calculator because they haven't seen it before. So let's practice that. Let's see those things in place before the test so that that's not the surprise. I want to help our children feel like, okay, I'm prepared enough with how to get to it. Now let's see how smart I am on these tests. And that's one of the big parts that we have utilized. So then the other document there is the literacy inventory, and that is another resource that kind of links to different resources that I've shared with the different site-based teams at all of the schools. Now that I'm probably 2/3 of the way through our schools, so we continue to do that. And what I have assigned them each time is to go through that learning lab and click on anything that they can find, anything that they find interesting. And then if you find something that you're gonna utilize in your classroom tomorrow, send me that link so I can inventory that for Portage's kind of learning lab. Those things that we are actually using and that we found value in, we're gonna share it with all the different parts of our district. Melissa's gonna put together part of our web page to link to those parts as well. So I just wanted to make sure that, one more, I think that's the last page, but yeah. Just wanted to make sure that you guys had a big picture view of how we're working on literacy. Yeah, we've got room to show, the data shows we've got room to grow. Here's what we're doing currently. Here are steps we're gonna continue to move forward with. And we hope that we can help all of our kids keep moving, raising the bar. Now, do you have any questions?
Yeah. I'm sure we do.
Oh, yeah,
Please.
we do. I'll start, if you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for giving us the history behind IRE, because it has really changed a lot over the last few years. Couple of questions, and it's about our, and I love this resource, the Learning Lab resources, awesome. And I'm always thinking about, especially given the landscape and legislation that we just had a chance to hang out with some of those individuals last week, how can we collaborate with our early, or what is our plan to collaborate with our pre-K, early childhood learning centers that are in our neighborhoods? Because if this is free and they have resources in here for early learning, if we can connect those dots, so at least the kids can come in and be ready to learn, or at least ready to read. You know, so I don't know what that looks like for us. I'm thinking about Geminis is building a new facility right here. That's gonna have a huge impact on our community as a whole. So how can we start that process and get them on board?
So obviously, that's a question that is kind of gonna be ongoing, because it's gonna be an evolving landscape. One thing that I can tell you from I know from our end is, Dr. Alanez and I are having some serious conversations about us building and making a pre-K program. And that's not gonna happen overnight. It's not something that we can just jump into, but that's something that same idea is something that we have thought, okay, how can we better influence that landscape? In the short term, we'll continue to offer resources to the preschools during the summer. We have offered them that same kinder camp kind of information, and anything that we've done that way, we've tried to share with the different preschools. Many of our preschools are really daycares, and so it's a little bit different focus, but we're trying to help them wherever we can in terms of giving them the resources and giving them links to those resources. I know that we want to continue to build our own capacity, but with Geminis, we've already got a pretty strong relationship, so that I'm sure will continue. We have every desire to continue that, even when they're not in our building any longer. But both groups want the same thing, so we'll continue to move forward with that relationship as well. But I think that in the big picture, that's something that I think Portage Community School or Township Schools are looking to expand our reach into the pre-K instruction.
Thank you.
Absolutely, no, go ahead.
Melissa and I have also been
Stephanie, if
working.
you wouldn't mind coming to just because it's being live streamed.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Melissa and I have also been working on and researching birth to 5 programs. And so we've visited school districts, we've talked with other people who have initiated that. And so in our own community, anytime that we're out at gatherings where we're working with other organizations, when we find those birth to 5 establishments, whether it's another resource providing things to parents or a standalone organization itself, we're grabbing on, we're heading over to their meetings, we're providing them with information, we're taking their information and sharing it out through our Parent Square. And I also share everything on early childhood that we're running into with our school advisors, because oftentimes they're working with our families and they notice, oh, you're bringing along a couple of little ones, or maybe parents who are expecting. So we're attacking it in as many different ways as we can right now.
Thank you.
And she brought up, we have begun over the last several months having community-wide meetings of all of groups that we can, are willing to show up, that affect children, not just pre-K, but all of the, so we have had, juvenile, detention services, we've had DCS, we've had, My Way, what, I can't think of the. Yes, that group is at that table. Our Greater Good is at that table. We've had some really neat conversations about how do we best partner across our whole community for all of our kids. And so that's been something that has been very beneficial, and that came from some of those same conversations that Stephanie was mentioning.
It's been good too because we now, in those collaboration meetings, are partnering with First Things First Porter County, which this initiative is focused on strengthening and sustaining partnerships in the community that focus on early learning and quality of life, all of those things with opportunities that engage the community as a whole to better partner with resources and development and make sure that our families are strengthened in kind of just community in general, and then what those crucial components are of early childhood that all of us just need to embrace. So that's been a new addition that we were kind of led to by Greater Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I
comments?
do. So thank you for that very, very good presentation, very informative. Thank you. So I have a couple questions. So in terms of the different tiers, how are the parents notified that their child is would be classified as tier 2 and tier 3?
You wanted to go ahead and,
Sure.
since that was part of yours,
And Linda can correct me if something is out of date, but when we look at MTSS, it is a bigger framework, and what is called response to intervention falls under that framework. And with RTI would be when we're moving through those tiers, so parents get letters informing them. Teacher contacts could be principal contact, and then of course they can have contact with their interventionist, but they wouldn't move to the next tier without that contact with the parent first. That makes sense. And also, when we talk about the shared services, it's important to know, because we are including our special education staff and being interventionists to help our students who maybe are not in special education, then they're also informed as well that that interventionist may be a special education teacher. So all of those avenues of communication are open. And then again, when we exit altogether, there's another notification.
And same thing with EL services for students. We're making sure that there is collaboration between Stephanie and Linda and the teams to make sure that all of our students, when all things are considered, how we're layering interventions. I know we've got the elevations training that is their modules Linda's looking at right now, and these are typically strategies and best practices in teaching EL students, but what we know is best practice is best practice. So we're looking at incentivizing teachers to complete some of those on their own, and they could be based on the teacher's needs to meet the needs of students. So that's going to be coming here soon, too.
So do you see a correlation with students that do not pass the IREAD 3 in terms of if there's transiency in a building, a particular building, the transiency rate is high, the number of special education students that were tested is higher than others, as well as EL students that are identified as maybe level 1 or 2, because at level 4 they exit, correct? So do you have any disaggregated information about that? I know that the literacy coach now will be able to have that information and can dive into that, but what do you have?
So
yeah, we
in
certainly
terms of-
do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we certainly do. And we, on the big picture, we do look at that for programming, especially when it affects a certain group of students. One thing that I think that Stephanie just mentioned and that we're proud of is that when a child struggles, it's all hands on deck. And that's what we're trying to knock down, all the different silos that we can in terms of that student is a special needs student, that student is an EL student, that we don't really care, they're a Portage kid. And so that means that everybody has some reason and right to work with that child. But having said that, some of the identifications give us better ideas on what are the strategies to use with that child and what resources do we need to bring to bear. And so about 45% of the students that didn't pass iRead were labeled as with some form of a special need. And so what that tells me is, yes, that's a high number of students that have some, but that also helps me understand that we can understand why that is, and we know that we have the interventions in place. Now, what else can we do to try to raise that bar just a little bit as we move forward? So, quite honestly, our EL students don't perform poorly. Obviously, a student, if they are at a 1 or a 2, are going to struggle with the English language, period. It doesn't matter what level they're at in terms of those, you know that's the case. Or else they wouldn't be scoring at a 1 or a 2. So those are situations that, and I'll get on my soapbox for just a minute, we have students, and both as a special needs student or an EL student, who have to take the test that I think it's a poor idea for those children to have to take the test in the first place. I think it becomes almost a defeatist situation. So those are the students that I feel poorly that we have to test and retest, and I almost want to pat them on the back and say, just give it your best shot, which we do say. But there are those also students who are close, and so if you look at our spreadsheet, and Linda puts together a very good spreadsheet of where the children fall with their scale scores and things like that, but there are some kids who have a good cause exemption. And so that means that there's nothing hanging over their head, but they're close to that bar. And so we do have them go through the remediation, and we do have them go through the test, because we want them to have that star on their report card that says, I passed the iRead 3. Even though all these things were against me, I did it. And so that's something that we try to balance out as well in terms of the capabilities and whether that's the appropriate test for that child at that time. And that's something that we feel strongly about, is just giving those kids an opportunity to shine.
Michigan had a similar law, read by grade 3, that they repealed because of marginalized communities and the direct correlation with students performing poorly on the literacy assessment that they had at the state level. So this requirement for retention was really punitive in nature. Here we are. And mainly because it is really putting an emphasis on the importance of a standardized assessment instead of on the importance of professional development, research-based practices, and strategies. So it's, although this is again where we are, just even today, I was involved in a meeting with some of our superintendent lobbyists, talking about what we as a superintendent's organization feel should be considered for a good cause exemption. We talked about everything from a student to, with their WIDA scores, all the way to a student with a cognitive disability, students who have been transient, all sorts of things. And then they are also looking, at least in our organization, what other data points do we have for this particular student that could be considered for a good cause exemption. I don't know where it will go, but I just wish we would look at other states that have implemented some of these things and see that our focus is kind of turning in the wrong direction. And so we will still comply, and we will still do everything within our ability, but when you look at our data, there is a strong correlation with being transient, with marginalized for various reasons, and having, especially that first attempt, getting that remediation is a big deal. I think that's a big deal. One thing that our team has been working through too is we have to get better at tier 1. And I would say every school district, if they were honest with themselves, would say that. We have to get better at that instruction at grade level that every student who is diploma track receives. We're looking right now, and we've got some concerns with the amount of time students are not exposed to grade level curriculum with the appropriate supports. That is not a huge factor for most students, but in some situations, we are putting an abundance of support below grade level, and we really need to be mindful of that, especially post-pandemic. So as we kind of look at the structure of our day, Dr. Stevens and Linda did a nice job with It's About Time, and that's where we're putting in that individual time that students need for remediation now, even at the high school level, every single day at third period. So we're making a lot of efforts, but the data is still not what we want.
Dr. Allen has brought up one, and I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the other literacy cadre portions is this, that we will adopt a reading series that is based in the science of reading. And so that actually doesn't have to happen until the year after next. But next school year, I've contacted all 5 of the approved publishers to ask for samples. We've got samples from 3 of them currently about piloting those next school year. If they're willing to allow that and work with us, we want to get a head start on that. And so we're going to look into that with all of those if they're willing to work with us in terms of putting that in play, just to try to help us get, why not start now? If it's good, let's go now. And so we've begun implementing that. And actually, we've had quite a bit of work with our teachers in professional development. Linda's been able to both find and fund a lot of professional development on our science of reading, just so that we hit the ground running when we do get those resources in our hands.
So as a third grader, and for those of you who don't know and lived it, how many assessments are they given in the spring? We're looking at WIDA, some of them. I read, I learn. What's the other one?
3 times a year, NWEA.
And so,
And then next year we did sign up for the benchmark pilot for I Learn,
Right.
where they will test 4 times a year? Is it
3.
3 plus the summative? So
this
we're
is,
doing the pilot for that.
it's a lot for little people. Now it's gonna go to second grade too, so, it's just something that's required. And also, when you look at the elementary schools and you see high scores and then you see the lower percentages, what I'm saying, of the students who are passing, or not passing, it has to be really frustrating for some teachers, especially that they work so hard and, people, or if this is published in the newspaper or whatever, they just look at numbers. So we just have to be
And I would
mindful
say
about that.
It's certainly not a reflection on the effort that our teachers put in. And so that's one thing that we always preach is that and that's a one-day snapshot of a child's day.
Right.
And sometimes it is a tough day. But also, that's a big reason why I want to put as many resources into our teachers' hands as possible, because I don't want them to feel like they gave it their best and it wasn't good enough. So I just want to make sure we try to get all those resources possible so that they really feel like they can give it their best shot, and then let those children, shine as well.
When I mention teachers, it's including support staff and
Absolutely.
administrators and everyone that touches their lives. And also, my experience was that for I Read, we would have workshops for the parents to kind of go over, is that something
Yes,
that,
our elementary principals connect and design, and then they'll have multiple times to engage. And we're really gonna be putting even a more tailored presentation. Mr. Sopko spoke to us about it just a week ago. Now for second grade parents, I mean, a little more in depth, because they definitely, so,
just the basic information
Yep.
that they need to help, so that when they are reading with their children or looking over their assignments, that, this is something that, that we need to stress and try to cover, not only in school, but at home too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
adjustments to the agenda tonight from the board? If not, we'll go to our superintendent's consent agenda, which has the approval of the personnel report for January 12th, 2024, the donation report, facility use request report. Do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Now we have our board's consent agenda with the minutes of our special board meeting, the Board of Finance from January 22nd, minutes of our regular board meeting on January the 22nd, minutes of a public work session on January 22nd. Do you have a motion to approve the board's consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the board consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on now to board reports. Does anyone have a board report?
I have a couple. The Portage Township Education Foundation, the grant cycle is open and will close at 4 p.m. on February 15th. Grant guidelines and applications can be downloaded from the website. All grants must be submitted no later than 4 p.m. on the 15th to be considered. Proposals that are of interest are those that accelerate student achievement, demonstrate innovation, capture students' interests, and foster hands-on, interdisciplinary, experiential learning. The foundation aims to award grants to any employee within Portage Township Schools. The foundation still has 500 club tickets available for purchase. You can purchase a ticket from any board member. The cost is $25, and it is good for the entire year. Drawings will take place in March, June, September, and December, and you will have 3 chances to win at each of those drawings. And the prize amounts are $500, $250, and $150. Also, we are hosting the world-famous Harlem Wizards on February 21st at Portage High School. Tickets are on sale now, and they are only $16 per ticket. This is a super fun family event that the kids are sure to enjoy. They have been dazzling audiences since 1962. Tickets are available online, and all proceeds from this event go directly back to the foundation to fund the grants. Then I have an update for the Portage Township Food Pantry. In December, the pantry served 263 families, 445 individuals. 130 of these are seniors. They had a total of 19 volunteers who put in 440 hours of work. They received 16,560 pounds of donated product. They will have a tag day on September 14th to raise funds for the pantry. And First United Methodist Church of Portage had a soup drive for the pantry as a Super Bowl celebration and collected a lot of items for the pantry.
Great, thank you. Dr. Finley, do you have an update?
Absolutely. I'm going to follow Trustee Vasquez.
Okay.
Okay, so trustee Shauna Finley and I attended the 6th Annual State House Day in Indianapolis this past Tuesday. It was sponsored by the Indiana School Board Association. This special event gave school board members in our state the opportunity to have an in-depth description on the education bills during this session. We also had the opportunity to experience an interesting panel discussion with lawmakers and connected with representatives and senators. ISBA provided us with an update on the bills that impact our schools. And of course, we had lunch and then walked over to the State House as the committee hearings were taking place. We were not able to see a lot of the legislators due to the fact that they were in committee meetings and hearings. So the lawmakers discussed bills that focus on raising low reading scores. That was probably the most essential bill. They're going to be spending the second half of this session considering bills. The deadline this year for the bills to be passed, it will be March 4th, and for the House of Representatives, and then on March 5th for the Senate, because of the fact that both chambers will be adjourned by March the 14th.
And as of Friday, we had an update, and going back on what Trustee Vasquez just shared, when we got there, the House was done on February the 5th, and on February 6th was our convening, and the senators were all going to their third readings, and everything's now assigned to committees. So everything that was going to pass out of House of Origin is all done. We have tracked, Indiana School Board Association rather, has tracked 116 bills. 42 of them are now crossing both chambers. The Indiana School Board Association supports a dozen of them, opposing about 5 to 6 of the bills. And about 20 of them, they're monitoring to see if there are any more amendments, because if there are amendments, then that'll tell us if we're going to support or oppose them. The one that's really telling right now is the House Bill 1376. So if you have an opportunity to reach out to your now senator, we want to oppose that one. And I want to also say, speaking of senators, Senator Rodney Pohl did eat breakfast with us, so that's a thank you to him. He did hang out with us for a little bit. House Bill 1376 is election day for a school board referendum. We want to oppose that one because it removes our local control. And that bill has been amended now to, at first, right now, as it currently stands, before everything changes, you can ask for a referendum during the general election, the November election, you can ask for a special election as well. The way that they're asking to move this, they only want to now do referendums originally just around the November election. Because in their mind, more people would come out for the general election versus your local elections and a special election. The pushback, they modified it now that it's not going to be that way. It's going to now just be focused on controlling when we can have controlled projects. So we want to still oppose it because we don't want to be in competition with other school districts in November or December around controlled projects if we're only allowed to have a referendum in November. So we want to oppose that one. So I just wanted to let you all know that that is the bill that we're standing on right now. That's a no to House Bill 1376. And going back to the retention bill, that one really, there's a lot of discussion right now, as you've already alluded to, Dr. Alanaz, that they're trying to get the committee now to make retention an option in 25-26 versus 24-25. But we would like to say, don't do it at all. Study it, review it, assess it, kind of what you were saying about looking at some data points before we take action and seeing what other states are doing as well. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Did they talk at all, I mean, are there some bills that are being pushed by, our out-of-control Attorney General, who thinks he's a superintendent of public schools in the state?
They didn't talk about the data board. I know
Yeah.
they did not talk about the data board at all. Banning spoke about a lot about childcare. That came up about how unaffordable it is right now. That was a hot topic. The referendum, the charter school, the cost, the way that that's going right now with the dollar versus all of these other things that they're looking at with charter schools. But they didn't mention at all about this data dashboard while we were down there with our Attorney General. Have you heard anything, Dr. Alanaz?
I have heard, I've been given some guidance on kind of the more or less planned ignoring of the current, act to try to get that attention. And that's kind of where a lot of people are right now. We just continue to be diligent about our process. And if there's a review that needs to be done, we will absolutely make that happen. One thing I'll tell you that is really interesting, so 1380 is set for hearing this Wednesday, and this is the special education bill that we really need to be contacting our legislators about, because right now there is concerning language in there that now is going to flip the requirement. It allows no due process for the school in the event that there is a complaint within special education. The burden of proof, opposite of our justice system, is on the school to prove that you did not do something. So, there is thought that this language could be taken out of it, but it is obviously still extremely concerning, and they are saying, they're asking us through the cabinet that I'm in for due process and also regulatory relief to really reach out before Wednesday.
Great, thank you. Any other updates?
I did want to bring up one more, or two more really, because this came up too. The chaplains in school, that's another one, that's Senate Bill 50. Chaplains in school is another one that's coming up, and it is to just have them come in and support when we need the support as school districts. So it sounds like they're gonna make that a local decision, they're gonna say yes, but then it becomes, we have to make some decisions locally if it passes. That's one, and the other one relates to, youth employment. There's some language right now to be able to modify, to increase the number of hours that a 14 and 15-year-old could work right now during the school day,
Till
like
about-
21 hours.
Till about 9:00 PM.
Yeah, so,
And it's just,
yeah, there's no support there either, but I don't know where it's gonna land. So it's just some things that we need to be, try to stay close to, so, yeah. So I'll update you all again in a couple of weeks and see where things land.
It is a difficult time right now because when it's not a budget year, there's a lot of people not paying attention. And that can't be because policy is more important no matter what session.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to attend the State House and representing us and bringing back this information. It's valuable.
and it's also an opportunity to talk to other board members from different districts, and I've had that opportunity, and it was very valuable.
Good, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to old business. We have the approval of Resolution R02-2024, recognizing Portage Township School Corporation's commitment to state proficiency goal of 95% on IREAD 3 assessment by 2027. I'll read the resolution. Whereas 1 in 5 students have not yet mastered foundational reading skills by the end of 3rd grade, whereas every student must learn to read and in turn read to learn, whereas the Indiana Department of Education has set a goal of reaching and exceeding a 95% passage rate on the IREAD 3 assessment by 2027, whereas the Portage Township School Corporation is dedicated to developing foundational literacy skills for every student, be it resolved by the Board of School Trustees of the Portage Township School Corporation, Section 1, that the Board of School Trustees recognizes Portage Township School Corporation's commitment to reaching and exceeding a 95% passage rate by the end of grade 3 or before the IREAD 3 assessment by 2027. Section 2, that the Secretary of the Board of Trustees transmits a copy of this resolution to the Indiana Department of Education as acknowledgement of their partnership and dedication in reaching and exceeding the 95% passage rate on the IREAD 3 assessment by 2027, adopted this 12th day of February 2024. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution R02-2024.
Second?
A motion to second, any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Thank you. New business, we have the discussion of school board meeting calendar from July 2024 to June 2025. Hopefully, we all had a chance to look at that. And does anyone have any issues with that or not? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
The motion to second, any discussion? Call roll, please.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes. Next, we have the review and approval of the MOU with Olthoff Builders. Dr. Alness, would you explain, please?
Sure, I just lost connection.
Yeah, me too.
Two.
Okay,
I
so it's
thought it
not
was
just
just
me.
me.
Trying to get back in.
Me too.
Well, I can tell you from memory that this is, Olthoff is building, as we know, a subdivision over here just north of Menards on Loop Road. And they were asking us to engage in an MOU so that they can have a sidewalk connecting to our property for ease of students and just different walking abilities. So we are asking for that, and I cannot pull the actual.
I have reviewed it and it's appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the MOU with Altoff Builders?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Smith, yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
You know your
Trying to
name.
get on.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes.
Can't get on.
Next, we have a recommendation to award the contracts for asbestos abatement at Central Sailor and Chrisman Elementary Schools.
Thank goodness I printed this. Attached is the recommendation for the bid that we are recommending to award. If you recall, this is part of our project for the indoor air quality improvements within the district. It started last year with the HVAC mechanical upgrades at Central and Sailor with new unit ventilators, better air distribution, and less noise. This summer, we will continue the improvements with Chrisman and the flooring improvements at Central and Sailor. Flooring improvements will include asbestos abatement, removal of all old carpet surfaces throughout the school, and installation of new MCT marmoleum tile, which is what we've been putting in our other spaces such as Portage High School West in the renovated space. This new green product will provide a healthier learning environment as well as easier and more cost-effective maintenance.
So for Paul Sailor's school, that responsible quota was for $141,650. For Central, it was $141,750, and Chrisman for $11,500.
Yes, and I think the important thing here is to also know that that is just currently what we know. If there is anything additional, we are, you know how that is with any type of remodeling and renovation, there could be, but this is just part of the normal anticipated project.
Very good, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the award of contracts for the asbestos abatement at Central Sailor and Crispin?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Next, we have the approval of an MOU with United Way. You can't do it. So.
Okay, well, I know what it is though.
Okay, yeah.
Is this Level Up?
Yes.
Okay. So Level Up, Melissa and I met with representatives from United Way. Macy Orania is now there as well. And the Level Up program is for individuals 18 years of age and older who are looking to level up in their jobs to become in a more, to engage in opportunities for furthering education to go into a profession of some sort. So with that, a job that's higher pay and hopefully benefits. They will look to provide relief for childcare through voucher systems that they utilize strictly with Geminis for the most part. Career counseling, you have to engage with your case manager once a week. They will also pay for the schooling. So if you want to be a beautician, if you want to be a court reporter or something, the only requirement is it has to be within a 12 to 24 month window that you can complete the education. They have to first go through 8 courses of financial literacy. And I asked, when you're investing this type of money into individuals who want to level up and gain, what is the buy-in? And they said by the time that you've completed the financial literacy components of, the agreement and requirements, that it weeds out anyone who's not truly dedicated. So we're looking at this from the standpoint of how do we partner with our community partnership meetings and getting this information out there, and us having an MOU where there can be a spot on our website for these things, and we can track and refer people to this. Parents, students that are 18 and over, recent graduates. We would really like to track some of our graduates that we may still have contact information with to kind of see, do they need some help in finding some placement of this? So Level Up, it's just been around since 2021, and it has had a good success rate so far, and it is free to be able to get some sort of an education and better performance, or better opportunities for financial stability and overall well-being for your family.
Great, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the MOU with United Way?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
The motion is second. Any discussion or questions?
So I just, whenever I hear wraparound services, I think that that's essential
Yeah.
for all, social, emotional, mental, and financial. And so I was looking at that and I'm thinking, what a great opportunity. Not only that, in order to share that information, you mentioned have them on our website and I looked on the website and under community, school and community, that would be a great
It would
place to
be.
just include
We also
that.
talked a little bit about the importance of having some opportunities for someone who is bilingual. Right now, they don't have a case manager who speaks Spanish or anything. That was one of my big questions, because as we're partnering with some of our families, that becomes a barrier very fast. And so they didn't have anything in place and said that that's something that they're looking toward. But we then shared with them, remind me of our system, Linda, that we brought it in and showed, what is it called? Accutrans. That's the one that has like 200 languages or something crazy. So you get a live person. So we expressed to them, and so we could even help facilitate that when it's a referral that we're partnering with them on. We've had employees and families that speak Mandarin, and we have Accutrans there, and you get a live person. So we talked about a lot of things, but I'm excited for this opportunity, big time.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Next up, we have an approval of an overnight field trip from Portage High School to Indianapolis, Indiana for BPA Leadership Conference on March 10th through the 12th. Do you have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
The motion is second. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Okay, next up, we have approval of course proposals for Portage High School. How We Get to Hamilton, Theater Production, Principles of Criminal Justice, Relationships and Emotions, Poetry, History of Lore, and American Culture. Are you able to pull any of those up, or you've got it?
Mrs. Lindgren has them for me. So you want a brief description?
Yeah, if you could,
Okay,
please.
sure. So the IDOE course description for How We Got to Hamilton, this is based on Indiana Academic Standards for Theater. They will study the history of musical theater and its place in today's society. This would be a non-performance based music class to bring non-music students into the department. So then moving on to theater production, the course description is that it's based, of course, on our standards. Students enrolled in the theater production class take on responsibilities associated with rehearsing and presenting a fully mounted theater production. They read and analyze plays to prepare for production, conceive and realize a design for the production, set lighting, all of it. So they kind of look into the challenge of theater, not just from the standpoint of being on the stage, and how the theater arts and technical theater arts coordinate and correlate. Principles of criminal justice. This is something that we have with our CTE partnership with Porter County Career and Tech Ed. Currently, we send approximately 20 to 25 students to Wheeler and Boone Grove for this vocational. This is a potential to be able to save some costs, as we have a lot of students wanting to go into these programs. So offering this would help us to determine if there are enough students that are interested. When I last heard Robbie Garcia, she said there were currently 17 students. This would be in the social studies department, but it's going into law enforcement, court, corrections. And on a personal note, my own daughter is in this program and just is thriving and loves it. So it is a great program, and we're just looking to expand opportunities. So part of a pathway for human services, we need to add an additional course, which would be the relationships and emotions. This is the principles of human service explored, the history of human services, career opportunities, and the role of human service workers. The poetry course, this is for students that are looking for literary analysis skills in poetry and writing poetry. We often times have poetry cut out of the regular English classroom course. So this would allow them the enhancement of literacy skills who want to dive further into figurative language. And that course offering is a study of poetic work, the interpretation of poetry, and the variety of structures, devices, and themes that differentiate one type from another. And then the last is the applied topics in history. This offers perspective for students in the area of exploring how the belief of the supernatural or paranormal helped create, inform, and shape the political, intellectual, and cultural landscape of modern U.S. society. This course is best suited for juniors and seniors who are interested in American culture and or American history, literary traditions, or supernatural. So just getting to some various opportunities for kids to tap into interests while still receiving credits to graduate.
Great, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the course proposals as read?
I make a motion to approve those courses as read.
Second.
Good motion, second. Any discussion, questions?
Just a question. Dr. Allen, is there an opportunity, I know February is typically so much going on. February is CTE month. Is there an opportunity in the future where we can talk about the students, because you just said something that was very critical, how many are going to which programs?
Yeah.
Externally, and how many do we still have in-house?
Okay. We still house the most.
Yes.
And we keep adding.
Yes, that's important.
Some people like that, some don't, but we love it.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, call roll, please.
Trustee Finley, yes. Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes. And lastly, we have the approval of contract service agreements, subscription for curriculum, grants department for Mind Play subscription, communication department for school revenue partners.
So MindPlay is our virtual reading coach for intervention, and it's a software subscription for $13,000. It will be good for a calendar year. It's going to be funded through the Title IV grant. And then communications, the school revenue partners, this is an advertisement content to generate revenue. So it is something that Melissa has brought to our attention that other school districts are also utilizing to generate some dollars in the communications budget, because we are limited to utilizing the promotions account, which is $1 per student per year.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to approve the contracts as read?
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
There's a motion, a second. Any discussion? And call roll, please.
Trustee Wilkie?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
Trustee Maleta?
Yes.
Trustee Finley, yes.
And next we'll move on to our superintendent reports.
As you all know, January was School Board Appreciation Month, so thank you for all that you do. And there was just a small token at your place today, just our appreciation for everything. This is a large commitment, and we recognize that, and we appreciate you. I did also want to mention, as we have opted into the pilot for iLearn with the 3 benchmarks and then the summative, this year, as you know, we have the first time that there is a reduction in the standards that came out in July. However, this year we'll test 100% of those standards prior to the reduction. We have advised our principals and our teacher leadership through site-based team, DQST, and then the principals in their buildings to really focus and hone in on that 75% and where Dr. Stevens is talking about that SENS assessment, because in reality, we need to, they put these standards in place for a reason. Let's really hone in on those, and fully knowing that this is the 5th, 6th, or more time that iLearn has changed year after year after year. The importance is not on, yes, it's important that our kids have access to grade level curriculum, rigorous content, and instructional supports. But we cannot get lost in the standardized assessment and not plan for the future. So that's one thing I did want to share with you. Also, I just want to share that this month we're focusing on honesty for our critical values and our initiative with No Place for Hate. But I also want to mention that we are celebrating Black History Month and the contributions of Black individuals in history. We are talking with our students about the importance of resilience, creativity, and strength, and what has come from the Black community in the face of adversity, not only in schools, but in communities. We, as a school district and as a community, the more we embrace this concept of Black history and the importance and difference that Black individuals have made in our world and in our country, we're all going to be that much more enriched in an inclusive society. So our kids are already doing some really great things, our teachers and support staff as well. But I want to commend the DEI team because they've put a lot of opportunities in place that are already driven by just giving kids opportunities to be experienced in different cultures and different opportunities for them to show what they've learned, what they're passionate about, and embrace these just diverse backgrounds in general in the cultures that exist in our school. The other thing I wanted to mention, I did put in your update, you may not have seen yet, the Exchange Club. As you know, Mike Stevens and I are members of the Exchange Club. Their pancake breakfast is in March. It's $10 a ticket. You can get your order to go if you would like. But I really just want to mention that us selling these tickets, it goes directly back to our Portage Township community. It is strictly a service organization for our schools, our veterans, and just those partnerships that exist in our schools and community. Regulatory relief, our cabinet is meeting tomorrow. I'm one of 5 superintendents in the state that are working with an educational lobbyist to continue to work on what that looks like and how we can give some solid input. Legislators are really good about reaching out to us. And as a matter of fact, I attended in Munster on Friday a legislative session for several hours. A lot of Lake County legislators were there, and we've got some good things on the horizon. One thing that I had really pointed out was when you consider the dollars that we receive for ADM for each student, there are many schools, some represented in the region, that have completely stopped midterm graduation because the school is then penalized and that money for the February count does not count. And so when you're setting courses for the school year, that becomes problematic. And one superintendent confirmed for him, yes, as a matter of fact, as soon as that legislation went into play, we stopped midterm graduation. I refuse to do that simply because when you're talking about trade schools and opportunities for kids, they would have to wait a whole entire another year to be able to submit for those things. And I just think that there are certain reasons that some kids, to include maybe they're a parent, maybe they just want to get out and do a post-secondary thing now. They've got a plan. And there are some really successful midterm graduates that I would hate to take that opportunity from. But the legislators don't necessarily realize that was an unintended consequence. So that was something that was really, they were listening quite well to that. We talked a lot about the reading legislation. We talked a lot about the curricular fees, and that we appreciate it, but we gotta look into this further. Just today alone, Dr. Stevens was on a call about IXL. It is a program that I made the choice to not renew due to the curricular changes. Our quote to get that back, as our teachers are really, really saying how important it was, $330,000 for 3 years. So, I mean, these subscriptions are substantial costs, and now that we cannot charge for curricular fees, we have to pick and choose, and it's getting down to, I mean, we've already kind of squeezed the turnip as much as we can, but it's becoming concerning. Let's see, was there anything else I have for you? I think I got it all.
You say squeeze the turnip?
What is it? No? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, because I have to say, sometimes Dr. Stevens is like, you said that wrong, so I'm like, wait a second.
Blood from a turnip, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I know that, but I wasn't gonna say, I was leaving that part out. It was a little more graphic. Yeah. I'm an
Anyone have
educator,
any
so I
questions for
like.
Dr. Alnez for her report? I see Melissa, are you gonna present us the social media report? Okay.
Sorry. I don't have my, I should have looked back on Cindy's agenda. Did you ever get back?
I knew,
That was pulled up on my phone real quick, so I apologize. So Nathan Ramian, who is our digital media coordinator for the district, pulled some really interesting statistics about one of our biggest marketing tools, which would be our social media accounts. We have two primarily that we use. So we have Facebook and Instagram. Everything across the board this year went up, which is fantastic. Our Facebook reach went up 82.2%. So that is the number of accounts that actually view some kind of post that we have made. So that was over 390,000 accounts that saw various posts that we made throughout the school year. We also had an increase of 161% increase in our Facebook page visits at 146,000 visits. So that's the number of people that actually come to the page itself. Our top Facebook post for the year that had a 54,144 account reach was our girls wrestling team going to state. So IHSA has said that that's an up and coming sport. I would agree with them because that's one of our big posts that we had. Instagram usage is going up. I'm finding that primarily that's where a lot of our kids are at, so that has become a really nice way of sharing district news with our kids so that they can become those ambassadors in the community as well. Our Instagram reach went up 242% to over 100,000 accounts, so that was really good as well. And then we had 10.2 thousand visits to our page, which is a 98% increase.
Awesome.
Does anyone have any questions about our social media use?
I got a nice badge, so thank you.
of course, I think the favorite ones are, when you focus on the kids' accomplishments and
Absolutely.
when they have events, whether it be during the day or after school or the weekends, and whoever does, you're involved in that because you take
Yes.
pictures a lot. You do a phenomenal job. You really do. Make it very positive.
Yes,
and
you do.
I look forward to seeing them all the time.
Yeah, it's been a really great marketing tool for our district.
Yeah, and obviously, our community and our families enjoy seeing that too, so,
They do.
as well as the students, so that's
One-
awesome. Good work.
One thing I'd like to see, though, a little bit more would be principals. I don't see the principals as much. I know the focus, I know it's on the children, but I don't know, there are leaders, and I don't know if they choose not to be in the pictures, or,
I think their focus a lot of the time is on the kids and giving the kids that recognition. So it's probably why we don't see them quite as often, but that can definitely be a focus. I know that coming up this school year, we do still have Assistant Principals Day and Principals Day, so we'll be doing some honoring of our administrators on those days as well.
good,
Great.
thank you.
They want us. Can I say kudos to us?
Sure you can.
We were in the paper the last board. So can you?
Yes.
Yes. There you
So
go.
for our financial rating,
That's right.
being the AA plus consistently now, which is a rating that is extremely difficult to obtain, but then even more difficult to maintain. And we are a district that our financial health is extremely strong, even while birth rates are declining, which is impacting every school in the region, the state, the nation. So as we look at that, I think it's just something to be mindful of, that takes fiscal responsibility clearly, first and foremost, at the board table, while we've still also tried to be very competitive with surrounding districts. When you take out the region, we are some of the highest in the state for pay. So it is very difficult to stay up here and have some of the same competitive pays when you consider districts with referendum, when Portage has not, by choice, went to our taxpayers because we've instead chosen other routes to do what we need to do here. And for many, many positive reasons to include those while speaking with our financial advisors. So with that, then you look at the whole state and where we are competitively and still having a strong fiscal management plan and responsibility. I mean, again, it definitely is kudos to you guys. It is a longstanding history in the financial office, as, Maria and Nick kind of grew up through that office and through past financial individuals in there and then continuing on.
Very good, thank you. Okay, anybody have anything else? Not on the agenda? I don't believe we received any public comment forms.
We did not.
So, our next meeting is, looking, on February 26th at 5 o'clock. And that's back here at the administration building. So with that, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.